Hello everyone, this is Dipali and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we will be talking about instance synchronization. We will understand the basic concepts of instance sync. I would recommend you to watch this video till the end, and people who are new to the topic should practice this in the test instance to get the most benefit out of it. Moreover, please also check the other topics in the playlist. Link for the main playlist is provided in the description below. And practice those as well in the test system to enhance your confidence. Separate playlists are created for the business rules and time management related topics. You can refer those as well for your specific needs. The link for these two playlists is also provided in the description below. If you happen to be new, please consider subscribing down below. Hit the bell icon to get notifications on my new videos. Without further ado, let's get started now. After watching this video, you will be able to understand the difference between instance synchronization and instance refresh and when each is used. What is instance synchronization? The main tools in instance sync, different types of instance sync, and how can it be enabled. Things to consider before enabling instance synchronization tools and setting up the instance sync job, the different instance sync artifacts, the recommended order to sync these artifacts. We will also check how to enable instance synchronization in the system and how to enable role-based instance sync permissions for each artifact. Difference between instance synchronization and instance refresh. Instance refresh is employed in scenarios when we want to copy all the configurations and data of the source instance into the target instance and ensuring that the integrations within the target instance are not impacted. When we want to have a periodic copy of the configuration and data into the test instance, and when we want to refresh configuration and data from the production or live instance to the preview or the test instance. Instance synchronization is used to sync or copy the chosen configuration from the source instance to the target instance without changing its data. It is used to adopt incremental implementation of configuration or any specific feature. It is used to sync the specified configurations from the preview to the other instance, which can be from preview instance to another preview instance, or from preview instance to production instance, or from preview instance to production dev instance. Looking at the definition of instance synchronization, instance synchronization is a way in which we copy the configuration of one SuccessFactors instance to another. This allows to push new configurations from one instance to another different instance. For instance, from dev instance to test instance, or from test instance to production instance. SAP SuccessFactors provides several instance synchronization tools to copy configuration settings from one instance to another. Instance Synchronization Wizard is used to set up and run new sync jobs. Manage sync packages is used to view, edit, and run the previously saved sync jobs. And Instance Synchronization Monitor Tool is used to monitor the status of the sync job. It is used to view the sync reports as well. Instance sync uses a push model. This means that the configuration settings are selectively pushed from a designated source instance to another designated target instance. Configurations cannot be pulled from the source into the target. Artifact level permission control and synchronization across different data centers is supported by the Instance Synchronization tool. Now let's look into each of these tools. In the search for actions for people, search for Instance Synchronization Wizard. It takes us to the instance management. The instance management allows us to manage the instances by either selecting the configuration copy action that will navigate to the Instance Synchronization Wizard, or the full copy option that will navigate to the instance refresh tool. So here we have two options, the configuration copy and the full copy. The configuration copy allows to select only the required configuration to copy from this instance to the target instance. And when we want to completely override the target instance with the configurations and data from this instance, then in those cases we use full copy. It is similar to what an instance refresh does. So selecting the configuration copy, I click on next. Here, I have the option to launch the Instance Synchronization Wizard. There is no pairing request from the source instance available at this point in time. Clicking on Launch the Instance Synchronization Wizard takes me to the Instance Synchronization Wizard, which is a tool to push the configuration and data from this instance to the specified target instance. In order to create a new pair between the source instance and the target instance, the data center, environment, and the instance ID are the three parameters that needs to be provided. If you click on Add New Pair, the target instance data center can be selected from the drop-down. The corresponding instance environment can also be selected, and we will have to provide the instance ID in order to generate the new token. The token then needs to be authenticated, and once the authentication is successfully done, the pairing is created. We can also delete the existing instance pair by clicking on Delete Existing Instance Pair. And once we have the connection between the source and the target instance, we can click on Start to start the sync. For now, I'll click on Exit and Finish later. In the search for actions or people, search for Manage Sync Packages. This is another tool which is used to view, edit, and run the previously saved sync jobs. Here we have the information message which says that if any of your target instance details like the data center environment or the company ID are not available for selection, click on the Add New Pair to pair the target instance with the logged in source instances. So here we have the option to either add a new pairing between the source and the target instance, from which instance the data or the configuration needs to be pushed. We have the option to select the available target data centers, environments, and the target instances along with the username. This is similar to what we had seen in the Instance Synchronization Wizard. The existing pair can also be deleted by clicking on Delete Existing Instance Pair. Clicking on the link, Click Here for Sync Status Updates, takes us to the Instance Synchronization Monitor Tool. This tool can be used to monitor all the instance synchronization requests. We have the option to search by different fields like created by, submission date, target instance, statuses, sync type, which can be a test sync or an actual sync, and the name of the sync. The actual sync will actually push the data from the source instance to the target instance, but the test sync would give you an indication of what might happen when this data or configuration is pushed to the target instance. It will provide you with the errors that might come up and can also tell whether the instance sync would be successful. It is more like a simulation of an actual sync, but the configuration and data is not actually synced when we use test sync. Click on Search. We can see that currently there is one sync which is completed successfully. Clicking on the details provides us the sync detail report. We have the option to download the report. Click on Download Report to download the report. The report will appear, or the report will look like this. This was just a sync report to sync a rule, which can be seen here, object type as rule. And the external code of the rule was RCM India JR on save. So we have the external code of the rule that was synced, and along with the response code, which said add OK, that is added successfully. Closing the sync details. Here we have the list of all the instance synchronization response codes. If I click on the response codes, the list of all the response code along with the response messages is provided. For example, admin instance sync user INV. INV stands for invalid, SEC is the second, and MGR ID is the manager ID, which says that invalid second manager ID. Admin instance sync RBP groups warning message, which says static groups are not yet supported. Admin instance sync object definition field override section not same. This means that the fields or the associations in the field override section for the following object definition are not same across source and target. So in the response file, we will have these response codes. The meaning of each of these response codes can be understood using these response messages. This helps us to correct or to validate the errors or any warnings that come up in our response files, so that we can rectify those errors and warnings and re-trigger our sync. Scrolling down, response codes in the legacy format. So if you see any of the response code in the response file as sync0101, this means that invalid HRID. 0102 response code means invalid user ID. So if the response codes are in this format, sync hyphen 4-digit number, this means that this is a legacy format and we might have to refer to this section to understand what our response messages would be. Going back to the manage sync packages. So once the sync is established successfully, we can click on test sync to do a test sync, or click on sync to actually sync the data from the source instance to the target instance. In the manage sync packages, the package, in this case for example sync of roles, can either be deleted or edited. Deleting the package will remove the package and it will not be available for any further sync activities. Clicking on edit takes me to the package edit wizard. In this wizard, I have the option to select all the artifacts that I would want to sync as a part of this package. This tool can be used to modify the package, and all the artifacts and dependent artifacts will be displayed in red if the current user does not have the sufficient permissions to sync the artifact. And user would not have access to view or edit such artifacts as well. Say for example, I want to sync the workflows from the source instance to the target instance, and I do not have permissions, as in the role-based permissions, to view or edit workflows in the source instance. If that is the case, I will not have access to the workflows in the package edit wizard, and I will not be able to sync workflows. If I want to sync the workflows, then I should have proper permissions along with the dependent permissions in the source instance. There is another scenario which fails because of the dependent objects. This means that if I'm trying to sync any object from the source instance to the target instance, and then there is another dependent object that should be synced before I sync that object, I will not be able to proceed with the sync. So here we see all the objects that can be synced, which could be the dashboard settings, the data models, the different foundation objects along with the inventories and the pay component and the workflows, etc. The home page configurations and the MDF data. Here it says that due to the ongoing technical change, the sync of the data in the certain MDF objects is temporarily unavailable in the Instance Sync tool. So that would depend upon instance to instance and case by case basis. And under the MDF data, we have a list of all the MDF objects that can be synced using the Instance Synchronization tool. The bank, the benefit information, buddy task, budget group, all the custom objects that are created in the configure object definitions are also available to be synced from the source instance to the target instance. Division is another foundation object, and all the data retention, time management objects as well. I just wanted to show you all the objects that could be synced. Whatever is needed to be synced and whatever you want to sync from the source instance to the target instance can be selected from this list. And once all the objects are selected, click on next. Here we have the option to select the dependencies or continue as is. It says following is a list of selected artifacts and their dependencies which have not been selected. Please confirm how you would like to proceed. If a dependency is displayed in red, this means that you do not have permission to sync that artifact. So in this particular case, if I click on revise selection, I go back to the previous page, and here I can select the dependent objects that I would want to include in my package. If not, I can continue as is or select all the dependencies. So in this case, I will continue as is. It takes me to another section which talks about name. The name is sync of rules. Since we are editing it, we are not creating this particular artifact afresh. This field is grayed out. So we have a note here which says the target username is to be mentioned, not the target user ID. And at least one of the following RPP permissions must be enabled in the target instance for a successful target user validation: the manage user permissions or the general user permission user search. So once we have these permissions set up in the target instance. We can click on next. This takes us to the MDF rules because we had selected MDF rules as our option in the artifacts. It asks us what rules do we want to copy. Do we want to copy all the rules or rules defined for the MDF objects or only the rules which are defined for non-MDF object. We also have the option to filter by the last modified date is after or before any particular date and the created date as well, created by external code, and status of the rules is another filter parameter. And once we search all the rules that we want to select, we can select them by clicking on this checkbox. Here we can see that 1 of 97 pages. This means that there are around 970 rules in the system. Because it says 10 items per page, we can select the different rules that we want to move from one instance to another and click on next. And once we have selected all the objects, or in this case all the rules that we want to copy the configuration of from the source instance to the target instance, it asks, do you want to override the existing MDF rules in the target instance? So if there is already a rule existing with the same ID, then it will override if we select yes here. So in this case, yes, we want to override, and click on next. Summary, it just tells the artifact details, which in our case is MDF rules. We have just selected one rule and the duplicate resolution is override. So it just confirms and click on save. Package changes have been made. Okay. Once the save is successful, we can either test the sync or actually perform the sync by clicking on either test sync or sync. There is an option to clear the fields as well. If you click on clear, it clears the different selections that we have made here. So we saw how the three tools, the Instance Synchronization Wizard, the Manage Sync Packages, and the Instance Synchronization Monitor Tool works, and the functionalities that they provide which can help us to sync our artifacts from one instance to another. Looking at the types of synchronization, the system can be set up to support either one-way or two-way synchronization. In a one-way sync, one instance is chosen as the source and one as the target, and only the source can initiate the sync. In a two-way sync, both instances can act as a source as well as a target, allowing them to copy the configurations back and forth. Consider there are three instances, one each for development, test, and production. In this scenario, the test instance can act both as the source and the target. It acts as the target of sync jobs initiated in the development instance and the source of sync jobs targeting production. Now let's understand how can instance sync be enabled. We can enable this tool from the Upgrade Center in order to set up Instance Synchronization tool in the system. The source and target instances are paired once the tool is enabled. The pairing of the instances is done as part of the initial setup and is a one-time task. The pairing of the source and target instances can also be done using the Instance Sync tool. The Instance Sync tools are used to create, run, manage, and monitor synchronization jobs after the Instance Sync is set up in the system. There are a few things which we should consider before enabling Instance Synchronization tool and setting up the Instance Sync job. We should learn about the Instance Sync features and think about how we want to use them. There are a few questions that we can consider. Which instance will be our source instance from which we want to copy the configurations? Which instance will be our target instance to which configurations can be copied from the source? Which configuration artifacts should be enabled for each source instance? Instance Sync can be selectively enabled for all or any of the available configuration artifacts. Which users should have sync permission for each type of configuration artifacts? Sync permissions can be granted separately for each type of configuration artifact to the different users or the roles. Instance Synchronization tool can be enabled from the Upgrade Center. We also have to get the pairing done for the source and the target instances in the system. We need to grant the sync permissions to the appropriate users or roles in each source instance. For each type of configuration artifact, sync permissions allow users to set up and run sync jobs. Sync permissions can be granted separately for each type of configuration artifact. For example, one user might have permission to sync the goal management templates, while another person might have permission to sync MDF pick lists and the MDF object definitions. Now let's understand about the instance synchronization artifacts. What are instance sync artifacts? Instance sync artifacts represent one type of configuration that can be synced with instance sync tools. Every sync job or sync package includes one or more sync artifacts. During the setup of a sync job, the sync artifacts that we want to include in the Instance Synchronization Wizard are selected. Each artifact contains a collection of related configuration settings and has its own separate setup steps and sync behavior. Each sync artifact may include specific details around it, like prerequisites. These are the prerequisite features which must be enabled in the system before using the artifact. Permissions. These are the permissions which are required to sync the artifact in Instance Synchronization Wizard. If you do not have these permissions, you will not be able to perform the instance sync. Select options or selection options. What can be chosen to include in the sync during the setup? Override options. When a selection already exists in the target instance, should instance sync override it or ignore it? This is defined in the override option. For example, if the business rule already exists in the source instance, which is identified by the external name or the external ID of the business rule, we have the option to select whether we want to override the existing business rule in the target instance or not. Dependencies. Dependencies define the dependencies of the artifact. These dependencies should be synced before or at the same time as the artifact. Copy logic. Artifact-specific copy logic to determine exactly what is synced from the source to the target. Filter by last modified. Filter options available during setup. Last modified date is displayed in the UTC time zone. We have the option to filter by the last modified date. Exists at target. The ability to see during the setup if the selections already exist in the target. So at the time of configuring the instance sync, we can see whether any particular artifact is available in the target instance or not. Every sync artifact can be evaluated based on these 8 criteria. It is beneficial to ask questions about these 8 details for each artifact. This provides a better understanding of our scenario. Now moving on to the instance synchronization order, it is best practice to sync the artifacts in a certain order. The recommended order is as follows, starting from the MDF pick lists, then data model, foundation objects, followed by workflow, route maps or the workflow groups, MDF object definition, MDF configuration UI, and then MDF rules and MDF data, followed by RBP groups and RBP roles, and then rating scales, system properties, object template, form label translation, families and roles, goal management templates, career development plan templates, compensation lookup table, competencies, form templates, dashboard settings or any other templates, and finally the homepage tile configuration and homepage tile groups. The configuration should be synced in this order. This is the recommended best practice to sync the configurations from the source instance to the target instance. Now let's see how to enable instance synchronization. Instance synchronization can be enabled from the Upgrade Center. The different synchronization tools allow syncing artifacts between instances and managing the instances. Instance synchronization should be enabled for all source and target instances that needs to be managed. It is important to note that once instance sync is enabled, it cannot be disabled. In order to enable instance synchronization, we go to the Upgrade Center in the Admin Center. In the search for actions or people, search for Upgrade Center. In the recommended upgrades panel, check for Instance Synchronization Tool Expert Self-Service. In our scenario, the instance synchronization tool is already enabled. So this option will not be available in the recommended upgrade section. We can try to upgrade latest continuous performance management. Click on Learn More and Upgrade Now. A dialog box appears which provides more information about instance synchronization if we would have clicked on the Instance Synchronization Tool Expert Self-Service. But in our case, since it was not available, it is a good idea to review the information before proceeding further. Read through the description, and here we have the option of Upgrade Now or Save for Later. Click on Upgrade Now to enable the Instance Synchronization Tool. Here it is the latest continuous performance management. A dialog box appears requesting confirmation to enable the instance sync. Click Yes and then click on OK. If I click on Upgrade Now, here we have a dialog box which says, are you sure you want to upgrade to the latest continuous performance management? And it says you will not be able to undo this feature once it is upgraded. So I can cancel it and maybe save for later. Now let's look at the permissions needed to perform instance sync. Instance sync administrator permissions are needed to access the instance sync tools in the source instance and to sync artifacts to the target instance. These permissions are set up in the admin center. This is done using the system permission tools, which can be either role-based or legacy-based. After the instance sync is enabled successfully, there are 3 admin tools that become available in the admin center of the source instance. They are the Instance Synchronization Wizard, Instance Synchronization Monitor Tool, and the Manage Sync packages. We have seen all these 3 tools in detail. To access these tools, permission must be granted to sync at least one type of artifact between the instances. Any user who has permission to sync at least one artifact can access and use all of the instance sync admin tools in the source instance. Instance sync permissions are granted on artifact by artifact basis. That is, permissions can be granted separately for each type of instance sync artifact enabled in the system. For instance, user 1 might be allowed to sync performance and goal form templates, while user 2 can sync permission roles and permission groups. Administrators can only sync artifacts for which they have been granted the appropriate permissions. Now let's check how to enable the role-based instance sync permissions. Certain permissions should be provided in the role-based permissions in order to access the instance sync tools and sync artifacts from the source instance to the target instance. Only those artifacts can be synced to which sync permission is granted. Access to manage system permissions in the source instance is needed before being able to do this. In order to do this, go to Manage Permission Roles in the Admin Center and edit the appropriate administrative role. Click on the role that you would want to edit. Click on Permissions. Go to Manage Instance Synchronization under Administrative Permissions. This is User Permissions. Under Administrative Permissions, go to Manage Instance Synchronization. Click on Manage Instance Synchronization and select one or more of the permissions that are available. There is one permission for each of the instance and configuration artifacts enabled in the instance. So if a user should have the permission to sync only the data model and the MDF data, only these 2 permissions should be enabled and the rest can be disabled. This actually shows that for each role or each user, the different artifacts can be enabled depending upon our requirement. To pair the target instance with the source instance, admin access to MDF OData API permission is required. In order to provide this permission, we go to the metadata framework under administrative permissions. Click on metadata framework and enable admin access to MDF OData API. Click on Done and save changes. So this is how we enable the role-based instance sync permissions. So thank you so much for watching the video. I hope it was helpful for you. Do remember to check my other videos as well. Link for the playlist is provided in the description below. You can click the link you see on the end screen as well. and do comments in the comment section if you're looking for any specific topics in the Employee Central area. See you soon in my next video. Thank you and bye for now.